Hello everyone, Stove here, and today, instead of the normal Know Your Enemy series I usually make, we're going to take a minute and talk about a few questions I keep seeing pop up. The main questions I get are, what controls and settings do you use, and how do I set up my ship for combat? So today we're going to focus on these things as well as some other PvP tips and tricks for you to employ in the verse while in combat. Note that this tutorial is for version 3.4 and things will change, and when they do I will update this to let you know the new setup I run so you can make an educated decision on what best to use for yourself. Also, what I'm about to go over are to be considered basic guidelines for you, not a you must do this because I do. Every pilot is different and every pilot will want to tailor their settings to themselves. The hard part about Star Citizen is knowing about each setting and how it affects you in a combat scenario. That is what I will go over so that you can adjust the settings to your preference no matter which control scheme you want to use. In the description below I will timestamp and label each module of this tutorial for quick access for those of you who want to skip ahead. So let's get started. This video also comes with a very fast speed course. This is the too long didn't watch for this whole tutorial. If you want to get a quick advantage of your fellow players in the PU, do these two simple things. Number 1, turn off Comstab. Number 2, use laser cannons. These are OmniSky MXA series and Quarreler. To reiterate that, laser cannons are so powerful because this is the damage per hit, as you can see, and then something commonly on a ship like the Saber stock, the Panther laser repeater, for instance, is only 95 per hit. All right, it shoots fast, and it says it has a lot of DPS, but you're going to need to hit that little pip a lot of times to equal this damage, whereas I just have to hit the pip one time in the center, and I get this amount of damage. Now, some people will say that the laser cannons are bugged and they do 30% more damage, or shield damage penetration. It really doesn't matter when you're talking about 551 per shot anyways. When you have 3 or 4 of these, you're going to deplete a small ship's panel in 1 shot or 2 shots anyways. So even if that penetration is true, no matter what, it's this damage right here, this 551, that is the big deal. It's not any over penetration or anything like that. This 551 will always remain superior to anything like this, okay? And as far as the meta is concerned, until they nerf this, if you don't use these weapons, you're basically, it's kind of like in Counter-Strike terms, you're using a Glock over here and everybody else over here is using an op, okay? And you're always 1 or 2 shots away from death. Alright, so that's as simple as terms as I can put it. I know they're going to change this one day, but as right now in 3.4, to be on an even playing field with other players, use these. Alright, now we're going to talk about controls and settings. A lot of people ask me when I make a YouTube video what I use for controls and settings. I do use mouse and keyboard. I have tried everything, guys. I've tried dual sticks, I've tried HOTAS, I've tried left stick, right mouse. I have an X52 Pro and a Thrustmaster 1600F or whatever it is sitting right next to me, rarely ever used. I tried to use them. I just feel like mouse gives me more precise aim. My favorite of all of those, except for mouse and keyboard of course, would be the left-hand joystick, right-hand mouse. I like that a lot. I just really felt like the Thrustmaster stick, because that's the one I was using in my left hand, had a lot of limitations to it, and I didn't like using my X52 Pro in that hand because to set it up I have to plug in my HOTAS and everything like that because it's an older model without USB and everything like that. So it's kind of a pain to set up. But if I had more hotkeys on that Thrustmaster, left hand stick would actually be pretty cool. And if you got good with it, it would probably be the best way to fly. Okay, just because it gives you more of a, not only does it give you more of immersion, but it gives you more of a little bit more control when you're turning, things like that. I just didn't like it because I couldn't find a really good place to put my throttle and everything else where I wanted it to on that. Again, I had hotkey troubles with it because, again, the 1600 just doesn't have a lot of hats and switches on top of it that I would like. So if you have a really good joystick, left-hand stick, right-hand mouse, really good to try, guys. Okay, if you have a really good one with a lot of hats and switches on top that you can keybind all this stuff that you're seeing over here on the left side, where you know WASD, Q and E, things like that, 1 through 8 up there. You got to bind all that stuff to make it really easy, okay? And so if you have a lot of hats and switches up there and you know how to do all that and you're really good and coordinated with that, go for it. I recommend trying left hand joystick, right hand mouse. If you don't, again, it's going to be complicated to have a joystick with a little bit less hotkeys than you would like. Moving on. If you haven't set up your keyboard to advanced controls and you do fly with keyboard and mouse, I suggest you do so now. You just do this by clicking that button there, going into profiles, scroll down, go to advanced keyboard and set it. Alright, so then what that's going to do is it's going to give you this profile instead, the flight profile instead of the basic one, which the basic one is really lackluster. It doesn't have a lot of controls. It doesn't give you the ability to turn off your shields on and off up there on number 6. You know, turning on the flight ready button, number 8, things like that. These all come in handy in combat because, like, if you get EMP'd, things like that, you're going to have to quickly turn on your engines or quickly turn on your ship, and number 4 and number 8 will do that for you, okay? Just really good to have, guys. Really, really, really good to have access to and know your hotkeys right there. So switching to advanced keyboard is not just recommended in combat, it'll save your life. All right, so if you haven't done that, do so. And again, up there at the top, you get the F5 through F8 keys, which again, you can switch power to a certain source on your ship. If you want to go to weapons, if you're having trouble with weapons overheating, you can give more power to your weapons. Okay, if you're having trouble with shields, you need quickly to shield regen or something like that, you can pop that up there. Hit F6 a couple of times. Okay, if you want to give more to your engines, hit F7 a couple of times, and if you want to pop them back to the middle, hit F8. Okay. Really good hotkeys to use in combat and when to know. Another good hotkey system to use is over there on your numpad, the shield raise keys. Your 8, your 4, your 6, and your 2 keys right there. And of course, there's a top and a bottom on your 7 and 9, because you do have top shields and bottom shields, guys. I don't know if you know that. But anyways, so you want those keys over here. You want these keys to either be hotkeyed somewhere else, or if you can hit the numpad and fight with your mouse hand or something like that, and you think you can go ahead and do that, go for it. I personally use a keyboard without a numpad, so I'm SOL there. I went ahead and bound them over here to these keys, and what I did was I use voice attack for them. Voice attack, I don't use any profiles for. I don't buy those $14, $15, $20 profiles. I think they're a waste of time and a waste of money. The immersion's really cool, but after a while they just kind of get in the way of things. I set up my own macros, so I'll just go into the voice attack program itself, set up a macro, say something like shield left, and program it to hit my left key, arrow key. Okay, and that's as simple as that, guys. To set up one of those voice attack macros like that. So in game, when I just say shield left, if I'm missing a shield panel, my shield panel on my left side will start to raise. Okay, and we'll talk more about that later. That's a little trick. But again, I do fly with advanced keyboard, and I do change some things up. For one thing, I don't have launch CM and cycle CM as number 1 and G. I did change G to weapon group 2 for my EMP ships. G is my EMP button, guys. I always fly with mono guns, that means I fly with one weapon of the same, always. So there's no real reason for me to have 2 weapon groups. So I assign all my weapons to group 1, which is my left click, when I get into my ship, which I'll show you here in a second. And that frees up my right click, and what I did there is I bound that to missile, okay? And then I just bound weapon group 2 to G. And when I get into an EMP ship, G is by default then my EMP button, okay? Number 1, which used to be my cycle CM, is now turn weapons on and off, and I use that for stealth reasons, okay? Because then sometimes it does help, sometimes it doesn't. Just depends on the server. It really doesn't, but just to keep your signature low and a little bit of peace of mind, I have weapons grouped to 1, and I can turn them on and off, okay? For my launch CM and my cycle CM, what I did is I changed that to my middle mouse scroll. If I scroll down, I will change my countermeasure from flare to chaff, and if I scroll up, I will launch them. Now, alternatively, I do have a couple of macros on my voice attack for them. I can just say launch chaff and it'll launch it, or I can say chaff screen, and what that'll do is it'll launch a flare or a chaff, whatever I have selected, at that time in an interval of every 2 seconds. Pop, 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 pop. Okay, so in a dogfight, if I'm getting a lot of missiles shot at me, and I feel like I really don't want to scroll up, and try to shoot instead, I'm just going to say shaft screen, and that's going to pop off that macro, and everything's going to be automated for me on the shaft side or the flare side, okay? So it's a good macro to have. Again, voice attack, very good in some areas. In other areas, you really don't need it. I just use it for in-combat methods like, again, raise power. Up here, these are really good to assign to voice attack. These are really good to assign to voice attack. Flares and shaft are really good to assign to voice attack. Really, there's not much else you need. Okay, maybe self-destruct or eject or something like that. If you want to pop those in there, you can. But again, other than that, you really don't need to use voice attack for much more. Okay, I just use it for simple things to help me multitask in combat. So that's a little tip for you guys. And as I said before, my middle mouse scroll is bound to cycle countermeasures and release countermeasures, of course. And then if I push it down, what that's going to do is that's going to target my different subsystems on my enemy ship that I'm trying to kill. Okay, so a very simple method there. I do have on my, I use push to talk on my mouse 4 always, so I really never bind that to anything in games. But my mouse 5 is turn off coupling. So that's my coupling hotkey on my mouse, so I can quickly turn that off and then back on. So I can do quick maneuvers like turn around and shoot somebody that's chasing me on my 6, things like that. I use coupled mode and decoupled mode for defensive purposes more than I use it for offensive purposes. Okay, and that's a little tip, and we'll talk about more of that later. So that's what I generally have changed on my keyboard. And also, I do bind caps lock to Comstab. Okay, that's very important, and we'll show you more about that in a second. Alright, so I just wanted to go over some keys with you and how I set up my hotkeys. Everything else is pretty much the same right here, guys. And one thing you're going to want to know and how to use on the advanced keyboard right here is this Alt modifier. Alt S and Alt W now are your forward and backward strafe, so keep that in mind, alright? Because it changes from 2 and 3 on your basic keyboard to Alt W, Alt S, which I find is alright. Alright, I have no problem with that. So, and keep that in mind. Go over these hotkeys when you do change them. Just know what everything does. It's really going to help you guys. Alright. Alright. So now moving along, we'll get into basic flight and things like Comstab, coupled mode, and what they actually do and how they can help you in combat. Okay, when you turn on your ship, this is one of the first things you'll need to do. Alright, and I don't care what ship you actually are starting to fly. It's pretty much the same in every ship. Go ahead and overclock your coolers and overclock your power supply. Those are the first things you're going to do for any ship, just because there's no reason not to right now. It's going to give you max cooling, it's going to give you max power. In the future, this will do heat damage to these modules and lower this health, but right now it doesn't happen, so you don't have to worry about that, okay? So no reason not to do this. It's going to give you an advantage. It's going to make your ship perform better. Alright, so we're going to do that. It's going to give us a little bit more power to work with. As you can see, this bar kind of moved up. We got more power from it. We got more cooling. Alright, and as for the stealth button, this is basically, it's used in conjunction with stealth. Even when I use stealth, guys, I don't use this button. It's really not needed, but stealth does seem in conjunction with suppress IR over here, which I'll show you a little bit more about later when we go over it. But this button right here does just drop this bar down there, and you can control this bar any way you want, guys. You can put it anywhere you want to use max power, low power. I don't want to use any power, but anyways, we're going to go ahead and set it to max because, again, we don't need to use this button right here. Again, stealth is a little bit finicky in this game, and I'll explain that when I go over it. But as far as this triangle goes, this is what your F6, F5, F7, F8 keys do. Okay, and note, if you do tap them, it just goes up a notch, all right? So if you do have a voice attack macro, make sure you account for that and make sure you set it to hit that key a couple of times if you want it for max. But sometimes one notch is just enough. So just know, guys, that's what these keys do. More often than not, I find myself using this triangle if I'm shooting a bigger ship like a 600i, Starfarer, Caterpillar, things like that, or Hammerhead, where I need to break through those shields and I'm shooting like 30 plus times. And you just jack it up all the way to weapons, and that's going to help you continue to shoot. Okay, Likewise, it's also good if you're getting hit a lot and you need to play defensive and you just need to put power to shields real quick. Go ahead and jack it up to shields, let those shields regen, and they'll regen a little bit quicker for you once you're giving a little bit more power to them, okay? And again, F8 just constantly resets it for you. Very easy to use once you know the hotkeys, and especially if you have voice attack. So moving along, the next thing you want to do is, again, if you're using mono gun setup, which you always should in this game, there's no reason not to use mono gun right now, guys. Again, we went over it in the beginning of the video. Laser cannons are king. There's just no reason not to put all laser cannons on all hard points on your gun, on your ship, okay? That said, you want to make sure they're grouped. Now, this is a Saber Raven, so my guns are already grouped, all right? If I scroll down here, they're already grouped. But in other ships, like a Cutlass, for instance, or a Saber, regular, you're going to have these grouped different. And the way you set these different is just by clicking the number 1 or the number 2. Okay, if these were 2 grouped different, I just hit this 2 to 1. All right, I would just make sure all my guns said 1. Okay, that's what you want to do. And then these, of course, are my EMP. And again, I did say that I have this set to G. And you do have to turn the EMP on every time you get into an EMP ship, guys. They're not on by default. And you'll see my power go ahead and jack up. That's how much power an EMP uses. You see that? Just for you guys wondering out there. EMP just being on uses a ton of power. Alright? But it does move up that stealth bar too. So that's the beauty about this EMP and stealth ship, is that while it does use more power, it moves the stealth bar up too, right? So that's why you can EMP stealth. Alright? That's little unknown thing right there. But that's what happens. That's why you can stealth EMP right there, is because even though it does take more power, it does shoot up that little bar for you. It doesn't just push this power usage over the bar like you would think it would. So that's pretty cool. All right, so moving along, again, grouping the guns, very important, guys. You want to make sure that's always done. Over here, this is your stealth screen. Now, every ship has this. You're going to have to go in here and you're going to have to find it under heat. It's just kind of hidden on some ships. Some ships don't have all the panels to show you this, so that heat is going to be left out more often than not. They're going to choose to show you all of this rather than this. So just pop over to your heat menu, and there's your suppress IR button. Now, you can do this a couple of ways. The best way to stealth, of course, is just to suppress overall IR, which is going to turn all these things on. You can unsuppress these individually. Like if you don't want to suppress your weapons, of course, you can just unsuppress your weapons right here. Boom. And then you can suppress everything else, okay? I have found that you do need everything on to be completely stealth. All right. Now, when I turn this on, a couple of things are going to happen. On these ships that I'm in right now, the Raven or the Saber, for instance, a smaller ship like the Gladius, the Arrow, any small fighter, the Hawk, with stealth IR on, they're going to show up at 1,800 meters. Okay, 1,800 meters is well within combat dogfighting range. Okay, that's very important to understand, because the average target range for you to pick up a small fighter is somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 kilometers. All right, when you're dropping that down to 1,800 meters, that's huge. All right, you're going to be shooting them before they can target you, and it's very, very hard to understand for people. It's very confusing for people to know what's going on. All right, the second thing that's going to happen when you turn this on is if you break range in a dogfight around 3,000 kilometers, all right, if you separate yourself from the enemy more than 3,000, what is going to happen is that your solid triangle that he has to target you is going to break, all right? Well, not that solid triangle. What he's going to see as a solid triangle, he's going to lose the firing reticle, the little circle, the little pip that you shoot at, and he's going to have to retarget the triangle again, okay? It's going to be a very strange thing to happen, because it normally doesn't happen in any scenario in the game unless somebody's using stealth. So if you haven't run up against it before, it's very confusing to understand why you have to keep retargeting. And this makes for passing like a boom and zoom pass, where you just pass somebody, shoot, and then pass again the other way and shoot again very quickly. With stealth on, it's going to make that very hard to hit and very confusing for someone who's not Johnny on the spot with their target keys, okay? So learn your target keys, learn your focus reticle key, which is R, to quickly target things that are within your crosshair's path. So if that ever happens to you, you can just slap R and continue shooting at something that's flying by you in stealth. All right, so that's how that works. All right, and again, stealth is very finicky in this game, guys. You'll watch my stealth tutorial. It's pretty much spot on, but again, it depends on the server that you're on, and it depends on how much power you're using at the time. Make sure your power is under this bar. Now you can, again, you can get it over this, you can squeak it over this a little bit, but it's not too much, and you don't want to max it out. As soon as you start maxing it out around the bar and doing too much, that's when you're going to lose your stealth and your signature is going to go back up, okay? And this really happens in dogfighting when your shields are regenning, you're shooting a lot, and you're using a lot of afterburner, okay? So, and again, at that moment in time, you're not really worried about stealth anyways, except for maybe helping you break target and getting you some shots where he's having to target you and you have a free shot or a free look, okay? So again, use stealth if you have smaller ships. Again, guys, you can use this on any ship. Use it. Except for the bigger ones, like a Hammerhead, a 600i. You're not going to be able to use stealth on those guys. It's just too big. But a Constellation, for instance, if you use stealth IR on it, it's going to drop. You normally can target a Constellation from around 20,000 kilometers. It's going to drop it down to around 12,000 kilometers before you can target it. Same thing with a Freelancer. Usually target those around 18 or 20,000 kilometers. It's going to drop it down to 10. All right, so again, this is going to help you stay hidden longer, especially if you're a hauler or something like that. If you're hauling Widow, if you're trying to do other hauls, this is going to make you a little bit more stealthy for those guys sitting and waiting for you at jump town. They're not going to see you until the last minute, or unless they scan, in which you can see them, okay, in which we'll go over scanning too a little bit later. I'll teach you all about that. But I just wanted to show you how to set up your ship because this is the best way to do it when you get into it. All right, so I always turn suppress IR on all my ships, guys. Some ships I do have to turn it off when I fight, but when I fly and just getting somewhere, I have it on. And I always have my coolers and my power supply overheated over here, as you can see. So I'm always worried about that. This is always going to stay in the middle for me. I always have my guns grouped. And over here on the shield side, now, this is a little known thing too. You can scroll this down. All right, you can set your shields to whatever you want. I can set it to 50%. I can set it to 100%, and they'll do that. They'll stay there for me. All right, and now as I jack this up because I lowered my shields, you're going to see the power required to heat these all up or recharge all these up. Now you're going to see my power go crazy. My power over here shot up. So again, this is just goes to show you what happens when your shields are recharging on your ship, guys. It uses a lot of power, okay? Another thing you can do on your shields, of course, is you can set your shields to forward. You can set your shields to back, things like that to side. All right, you can have more shield anywhere, and you can do this a couple of times. You can set this over here with this. You can set it all the way if you want. You can pop it all the way up there if you want, all right? You can do a lot of things, all right? You can turn all these off, turn all the way up to forward, go all the way backwards. Again, I don't really do this. I like to keep all my shields pretty much centered. If I'm in a turn fight, which I normally am in a dogfight because right now the meta is strafing and turn fighting, more often than not, your shields on the front aren't going to get hit anyways. Depending on which way you're strafing, your side or your left or right shield are going to get hit. So if I'm strafing this way, like this around somebody, and he's shooting me and strafing the same way, my left shield's going to get hit if he shoots, okay, not my front. All right, so just keep that in mind. That's why I don't mess with this. Also, there's a little bit of shield trick you can do. If this shield panel got shot out, for instance, and all my other 3 shield panels were up, I could just hit this button right here, and it would supply some power from all of these to this shield and pop that shield panel back up. So in combat, that's why this is important to have these hotkeys right here, because this is going to save your life. This is going to prevent your ship from taking armor damage, which is huge. So anytime you can prevent armor damage from happening and just shield damage, that's fine, because shield damage is always replenishable, armor damage is not, okay? So just remember that. So that's why I fly with these just kind of centered. All right, so always, you can do whatever you want here. You can pop them in the front. Again, just know that that's what that does, and that's why I keep them centered for a reason, just so I can supply power to other shield panels if the one does drop. All right, and that's going to be pretty much going to conclude it for the panels and how you should set up your ship when you want to start to fly before you should take off, okay? That's pretty much the motions I go through, and you should too. All right, and moving along, we'll talk about some of these coupled mode and Gsafe and some of these maneuvers that you can do with them and with them on and off, all right? All right, now we're going to talk about coupled mode, Gsafe, Comstab, and ESP, and how they affect you flying in combat. A lot of people will tell you what these things do. They just want to tell you what these things do to you in combat, and I think that's more important to know than anything. Alright, we'll start out with Comstab because that's the most asked about thing. Even I had questions about it when I first started playing. I didn't know what it was. I just know that it comes defaulted on. Okay, and being defaulted on, it is kind of something that you leave on and you learn to fly with, I think, but it's also detrimental to you. Okay, so again, people will say that it's traction control in space, but it's really much more than that. So let's go ahead and get down to it. So I'm going to use this rock as an example, and we're going to strafe around it. Okay, and now notice how fluid this is. See how I can just drift around this rock. Not only that, but I want you to look at where my crosshair is, allowing me to point. Okay, see how I can point my crosshair in front of the rock? Alright, so let's imagine us going into a strafe fight. I'm keeping my crosshair well out in front of the pip, right? I'm really having no trouble doing that. Now I'm going to start to black out a little bit. Alright, so we're going to start to slow down. But that's just to show you how fast you can go with Comstab off. Now let's look at with Comstab on. So we're going to turn it on. And now we're going to try the same thing, same direction. Alright, now what's happening? We can't even go fast. There's almost no speed with this strafe at all. It's fighting me. If I go too far this way, it's going to pull me into the rock. So I have to keep my crosshair towards the back of it. You see that? Just to keep the strafe in a nice orient. Alright, so this is why Comstab kills you in a dogfight, guys. Because it doesn't give your ship, and now I'll show you the actual speed of it. So we'll get away from the rock here because it's not going to allow us. But look how fast I'm actually being allowed to strafe right now. I'm only being allowed to strafe, even with Afterburner on, a maximum of 120, 130, and it drops down to 70 because it's trying to slow me down. So let's turn it off and give you a good example. Now look at my strafe speed. So now I'm strafing with Afterburner on. Do you understand? Okay, that is why Comstab will kill you in the PU right there. Right? It is not just traction control; it's death control. All right. So if you have Comstab on and I have it off, and we engage in a turn fight, I'm winning that fight. It's going to be a very easy fight for me to win because I can keep my pip way out in front because I'm allowed to do that while I turn fight. All right, and your pip's gonna be somewhere around here, struggling to try to get onto my lead. Okay, it's not gonna happen for you because of Comstab. It's slowing you down. Now, I do keep Comstab bound to caps lock. All right, defaulted there is no key bound to caps lock, so go ahead and do that. I think at one point in time early on in the game settings, Comstab was bound there. I remember using it, so I just rebound it to caps lock. And I also have ESP bound to alt caps lock. So I can turn both of these off, okay, and on. And what's cool about that is that if you turn off ESP, which you can, and for some reason my hotkeys, is it control ESP? No, for some reason I guess in Arena Command it's different. But if I turned off Gsafe, for instance, right now, not ESP, I'm sorry, but if I turned off Gsafe with Comstab off as well, that's going to give you, and it's going to allow you to turn even faster. Okay, so this is just a tip. If you can fly with Gsafe off like this, but now the moment you start to black out, you got to stop. You got to know when to stop because it is finicky and you'll black out so quick in this game. But if you turn off Gsafe and Comstab, your ship is going to fly at maximum turn speed always. All right, it's slowing me down right now only because it's trying to keep me from blacking out. So it's only going to slow me down when it thinks, hey, you're starting to black out, Gsafe is on, so it's going to slow me down. All right, so but in a dogfight you don't want to black out. It's a catch-22 here. If you're just a master at controlling it, then go ahead and turn off Gsafe and fly with Comstab off, and now in a turn fight you are the best. You're going to have the best turning. You're going to be hard to beat because you're going to be turning very quickly, much faster than any ship in the game, even if your ship is slower than another ship. Okay, so that's how you can beat a ship, guys, that is faster than you, things like that. You got to know what to turn off and what to turn on. Comstab is not a good thing to have on always. Now, however, Comstab is cool because it does come with a couple of tricks, okay, that you can use it with. Now, one of the most basic maneuvers that I use in this game, and let me get away from this sound effect going on here, but one of the most basic maneuvers you can do in Star Citizen is just simply turning your throttle all the way down to 0 and turning around with your mouse. Okay, you're just going to swing your mouse around, and you'll see me do this here. Okay, we're going 240, and we're going to drop it down. I'm going to turn around, and we're going to go. Okay, very, very basic maneuver, right? But it's faster. Let's see, we're going to go a little bit faster now. Okay, we're going to try to get up to around, let's say 800 or so. Okay, and then we're going to drop it down again. Do it again, but now it's fighting me. See how the ship is fighting me? And now before I can go forward again, we're going to have to drop down and then get right back up to speed, and then we're going to go forward. All right, so just know the faster that you're doing or going when you pull this maneuver, the more your ship is going to have to catch up with itself on the back end when you turn around, right? Well, with Comstab it's a little bit different, so let's go up a little bit faster again. So now we're going to fly a little bit fast, and then we're going to throw that E brake on with Comstab. We're going to turn it off, and look what happened. Now we're instantly going the other direction. There was no wait time, there was no glide time behind us, no nothing. We just E-braked it, but it also kept our forward momentum a little bit, all right? So that's just something you can do with Comstab. And so we did it again there. It's just faster to go in another direction, all right? So depending on how fast you're going and you want to pull this maneuver, you're going to want to use Comstab with it or not. All right, so that's why I keep that on control. It's kind of like a little e-brake for me, and it kind of keeps me going in the opposite direction quicker than just kind of gliding and trying to do it. All right, so that's a little bit of a basic maneuvering tip for you. And if you combine that maneuver with the turnaround maneuver with strafing, guys, there's really no much to teach you but coupling, right? So we're going to teach you coupling. Because in this meta is so simple that all it really is strafe fighting and turn fighting, guys. And all you have to do is find ways to orientate your ship to get your line of rest, to find your point of aim, to shoot. And once you think about it that way, it's very simple to get somebody into a turn fight. You can almost bait them into it. Even a guy that likes to boom and zoom, he's going to have to try very, very hard to keep boom and zooming, to not get stuck into this turn fight meta, because it's just almost intuitive, okay, for people to try to get into. So with coupling, what you're going to do here is I have coupling bound to mouse 5, of course, so just turn it off, and we keep gliding the same way as we were, and we can turn it back on, and now we're facing the opposite direction, and now we're going to go, okay? So I use this more of a defensive maneuver. If I'm in a big dog fight and I just have somebody on my 6 and I cannot shake them and they won't get into a turn fight with me, not only that, but I can't get into a turn fight for some reason, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that. I'm going to turn around very quickly, much faster than what I just did, and I'm going to pop it bomb, but I'm also going to shoot at him, okay? So that's one thing that you're going to have to learn when to use and when not to use, is this coupling mode. It's a lot of people like to use it a lot in combat, and you can tell, but it's really not that good to leave on always either, so you don't want to have this just on. You're only going to want to do it to, swing your ship around, orientate yourself. Now, you can kind of orientate yourself with a pivot better using it sometimes. It has another use. It's kind of like a pivot foot in basketball. So like if I'm in a turn fight or something, you can do that. You see how my crosshair went a little bit faster there for a second, to orientate my crosshair to a pip or try to get it in front of the pip or something like that. You can do like something like that. So it does have other uses, and you can use it kind of as a pivot foot in combat. Rarely will I ever need to do that, because I rarely have anybody turning as fast as I do, because in my opinion everybody runs with Comstab on, and I've fought very few veteran pilots, and I can count them on one hand in the PU, the pilots who actually give me good fights in a Trouble 2 fight, and those guys have Comstab off, obviously, right? So again, it's very easy to tell when somebody's not using the right ship settings. Okay, so you're going to want to practice with these, get it to where you can be comfortable with these settings and understand and know what they do. ESP, I do fly with ESP on and fixed weapons. All right, there's another setting that goes along with this ESP and fixed weapons, and that is Alt-M. All right, we're going to hit Alt-M, and now you're going to see my, oops, I think it was on before. Let's see. Yeah, so it was on before, so now we have Alt-M. So you see how my head is turning a little bit, and there's a little bit of play. I'm just wiggling my mouse back and forth, and you're going to see the crosshair kind of bounce, because that's my head turning, okay? With gimbaled on, when you have gimbals on your weapons, this is really good. When you have fixed weapons, this is kind of tailored to the pilot. It's good and bad. So like if you're trying to track something and like let's say the pip jumps up a little bit, you can kind of jerk your crosshair up like a tad. You can do these little jerky motions like this. I don't like it because of the jerky motions, so what I do is I keep it off, and so now there's no play. You see I'm wiggling my mouse back and forth and there's no wiggle at all on that crosshair. So I feel like this gives me more control and more smooth control over my crosshair, to where I don't have to work as hard to find my line of rest. This right here would make it really hard to find a line of rest to me if I'm bouncing back and forth or something like that. Whereas this is just really smooth, and I'm doing the same motions with my mouse, but again, you can see it's just really smooth, okay? So just know there's a couple of options in your ship settings that will allow you as a pilot to tailor it to you individually and how you like to shoot. You can change your mouse curves, guys. You can change your mouse sensitivity, all right? I'm not going to tell you what settings to use there because that's to the individual. Just note that I use ESP with fixed weapons because I use very high mouse sensitivity. I'm at around 1200 DPI on my mouse. So, you know, when I turn my mouse, my ship goes pretty fast. But again, ESP will allow that to kind of slow down when it centers on my target ship. ESP will slow that motion down. It'll kind of put me in the Matrix almost, if it were, slow things down for me and allow me to adjust my crosshair on target and keep that pip centered. So, and again, I use a method of aiming called ambush aiming, and then once I have it ambushed and I'm on it, it's very easy to just, once you have the muscle memory, to just tweak your mouse a little bit to the left or the right, guys. Like all I'm doing right here is I'm just tweaking my mouse a little bit to the left, and I'm getting this nice smooth. So if you can imagine a ship turning with me here, it'd be very easy to follow that crosshair or that pip, okay? And that's what you're looking for in aiming. You're looking for your center of aim and your line of rest, okay? You're going to try to find your line of rest, and to get your line of rest, you're going to work in a number of different ways, okay? You can use strafe to find your line of rest, like this, like in a normal shooter. Instead of moving your crosshair over to somebody's head, you strafe over to their head and keep your crosshair centered, right? Or you can roll into it too. So with a combination of strafe, roll, and a little bit of mouse movements, I can move my crosshair in front of or on target and then wait for that target to kind of reach my crosshair and then shoot, okay? And that's the method of aiming that I use, and that's the best way that I can kind of explain it. Alright, and here we are in Arena Commander just practicing some aiming, and I don't like to use Arena Commander a lot, but for aiming's sake, it's fine. As long as you fly right, these NPCs really have a hard time hitting you. It's almost too easy, but for practicing aiming, it is pretty cool. And again, it is good practice. So we're going to go ahead and just show you some clips of this. To show you how I line up target, first, I want you to notice that I am using lead pip instead of the follow pip, I guess as it's called. There is an infographic out there that somebody made a while ago, like 3.0 or 2.9, I don't know. But he says that you or he recommends to use the other way that I'm not using, which is it gives you a little line, and then you have to drag the circle on top of your target ship to shoot. So it's a little bit more of the opposite way of doing it. Now, I'm not going to say one way is better than the other. I'm just going to tell you that this is my preferred method because I feel like the pip being out in front like that really helps me in a turn fight. I could just be a placebo effect. It could be fine the other way. I just don't like using the other way. And the other thing is the infographic says that you can't target subsystems. Now, that's true and not true. You can target engines, but you really can't target anything else. But if somebody were to try to tell me they're using this other target system and they're actually aiming at cockpits and shield subsystems and everything like that, come on, be realistic. You know you're not. So take that for what you will. Use whatever aiming reticle that you find best for you. I'm not going to tell you which is best and which isn't. I use lead pips just because, again, I find that just shooting that little circle is very easy for me, and again, keeping my nose out in front in a turn fight, following something out in front of the ship helps me keep my nose angled more towards his inside, okay? So that just helps him have helps me have an easier time to prevent getting hit by him trying to turn into me, okay? And I'll explain that a little bit more in a clip coming up, but that's how I do it. And as you'll see here as I'm firing, I'm just trying to find a nice line of rest here, guys. I'm not going to chase that pip too much, like as it right there. When it starts to change directions like that, I'm just going to follow to see where it goes. And my method of aiming here is it's turning. Okay, I'm going to put my crosshair out in front of it, and then I'm going to let it come to my crosshair. All right, and then I'm just going to guide it along with my mouse. I'm going to nudge my mouse a little bit, and that's going to cause my ship to turn along with that crosshair. So once you get this muscle memory down, it's really, really, really easy to figure out and do, okay? You just got to find your line of rest and be comfortable with that. Also, I am using a black cutlass here with 4 times Omni-Sky weapons, laser cannons, and then in this clip right here, I did turn one of them off for you guys, so now I'm the equivalent of a Gladius using 3 Omni-Skies, or an Arrow, or an Avenger series using size 3 Omni-Skies, just to give you an idea of the DPS on those ships. Not too bad, guys. So again, you can practice this with any ship that you have. Just go ahead and put some Omni-Skies on it, fixed or gimbaled, and then come in here and just try to find your line of rest. Okay, put your pip out or put the crosshair out in front of the pip, and just try to let it come to you and see if that helps you aim a little bit more. Okay, again, I don't like to try to follow it all around and get crazy like right here, so I'm just going to let it pass. I'm not going to try to take shots, and then I'm going to put my crosshair out in front. Okay, it's very easy to do, and once you get this method of aiming down, it's such a calm way of aiming that you're not frantically trying to find the pip, and you're not jerking your crosshair around. You're just taking well-aimed, calm shots. Okay, and that's my method for that. Also, one thing to note here, I'm not using missiles in Arena Commander because in the PU they work different. There's a lot of lag associated in the PU right now, and missiles just have a hard time tracking the target. In fact, they have a hard time exploding once they reach the target as well, so they end up causing a lot of turbulence because they'll stick to your target and bump it around. So for this reason, if you're going to use missiles, use them in that way. Launch a bunch at your target. It'll cause a lot of turbulence and they'll start exploding around them. You might get some damage and get a kill there, especially if they stop. You will, but if they keep moving, it's really hard to get a kill with a missile right now. So you can use them to bump ships though, so that's a good way to use missiles right now in the PU. And this is what I was talking about before when I talk about getting the inside and not allowing someone to actually put their reticle on you. This is why I feel like lead pip is a little bit better, but again, this guy is clearly using Comstab and he's not able to turn with me, and you can see his laser repeating shots going just to the left. Alright, so we're going to go over some scanning now. This is one of the most useful tools in Star Citizen to find enemies and to keep from being killed by enemies. So scanning itself seems to work right under 30,000 km. You see here it is at 28.7. I'm able to get him on a reading. I wasn't able to get him at 29. It was only at 28.7. And that's what it looks like when you scan somebody. You'll see a square show up, and then you can fly towards that and eventually identify it. Now, this is what it looks like when somebody else scans. You're going to see a little bubble appear, and it's like, what is that over there? It doesn't look like the bubble reached you, but it does, okay? So they can be very misleading on that. Just know that this guy did pick me up on scan, and he is going to fly at me. And he is stealth, and this is what a stealth EMP looks like for those that don't know. Also, this scanning will pick up stealth ships. In that one clip where I was scanned, I was stealth. So stealth has no immunity to scans at the moment. In the future, this could change with decoy scans and things like that. So right now, if you get scanned and you're in stealth, go ahead and rescan the other person, because hey, might as well. They already know you're there. You might as well know what's coming. So scanning also has a couple other uses as well. You can go ahead and target a ship like this, and it'll give you all the pilots and all the people inside. You can see here that the pilot is Onami, and that he has a friend in his gunner seat, and you can see the gunner in the top right there moving around. You can see the gun move around. You can see the swivel, the little beam of light on top of the ship there. So that's a good way of indicating where they are where they are at on the ship. So if they have a gunner, you can really easily see that there is a gunner on the ship in your top right targeting reticle. So anyway, here I am just looking around. I'm trying to wait for this guy to get out of his ship. What I'm trying to do is let him buy Widow. So there's an easy way to tell when somebody gets out of the ship. Right there at the bottom, you'll see it says Pilot Onami. When that turns to unknown, then that means he's gotten out of the pilot chair. Okay, and you'll see that here in a second. That pilot will switch to unknown here, which just means he exited his seat. Okay, so we're going to switch back, and he's still in there. And now he just got out of the seat. Okay, so now he's going to go, I'm assuming, to buy drugs in the jump town. So here I am, I'm just scanning. I'm trying to see when he leaves the ship, because again, it's going to tell me as soon as he leaves the ship, because it's only going to be that Z22 guy left inside there, and right there it is. There you go. So he did go in there and he bought some Widow. Now I'm waiting for him to get back in. Now, again, you can wait for that pilot unknown to switch to Onami, but sometimes you'll get lucky and over the triangle where my crosshair is, you'll see his name just pop up when he gets into the ship and turns it on, and that's also a good indicator that, hey, he's in. So, because again, there's a little bit of lag and a little bit of delay associated with scanning sometimes, depending on the server you're on. So just know that that can happen. But as you'll see here, that he does get back into his ship here shortly, and then I go ahead and make my attack. All right, and you're probably wondering why I would attack somebody or wait for them to fill up Widow first. You think it's just griefing. You're thinking to yourself, Stove, why are you doing this? You can't even get the Widow. You're wrong. I can. And I'll show you that in a second. All right, there's this rumor that's been flying around the PU that CIG, for whatever reason, stopped loot from dropping because people were dropping loot all over Port Olistar and causing it to lag out. That might be true. I don't know, but I have received loot dropped and I've been able to pick it up since whatever people say or whenever people say that happened. I think it's more of a server load issue, whether or not it's going to drop, just like missiles. If you get a fresh server, missiles work fine. If you get a fresh server, loot will drop on the ground and you will be able to pick it up. It just depends on how long it's been up. It depends. But also, you got to get real close to see these boxes. I think a lot of you destroy ships and you just don't know that they're there. You'll see I even have to get closer than this, and you'll see to the left of my crosshair boxes. All right, and then they quickly disappear because this server was overloaded. So you got to get down there quick, and you got to try to find them, and you got to get really close. Now here we did destroy a Freelancer Max at Jumptown, and all the boxes did drop out, and they scattered everywhere. And these are my Corp Maves running back to the Constellation to place them. Just note that a couple of ships are really buggy when you're trying to place these down, and this Constellation is one of them. We put all these things on the drop-down hangar, and when we tried to pull it back up, the boxes just kind of fell onto the ground. So we had to do it individually and put them inside the ship, not on the actual bay door hangar that drops down from the ship. So keep that in mind. Some ships vary, but to sell these, all you do is put them in your ship and then you fly to wherever you're going to sell them originally, and you open the console up and you can just sell them. All right. Now I would say about 1/3 of the Widow actually dropped onto the ground, and we were able to pick it up from what was actually in his ship, so we didn't get all of it, and I think this sold for like a measly couple thousand credits, but still, hey, right, you can still take it, and people say you can't. There is a point for PvP in this game. You can take items, and you can take people's trade goods. So this doesn't just work with Widow, guys, this works with all trade goods. And just to add to that, at Jumptown a lot of people like to use Railguns. Railguns will destroy small ships really easily. It takes about 2 or 3 people to knock down somebody's shield. And a ship like the Cutlass, it's going to be harder because that has 7,000 shield HP, but it's doable with a couple of people. It is your universal key to opening ship doors. Once the shields are down, as you can see, I just shot the back bay door there, and that's as far as it's going to open. So when you're on the ground, it's going to be a little bit tough to get into these ships, but in space, it's actually pretty easy. And you don't need a railgun to open any doors, guys. You can do this with your ship weapons. Just blow open the shield and shoot the door, and it will open for you. For in space mechanics, this is pretty fun to do, to board somebody's ship over, like at Spaceport Karaya or something like that, instead of just blowing up the ship. So use these techniques and have a little bit more fun in the PU than just destroying a ship. Okay, and that's going to wrap things up for the Beginner's Tips and Tricks and General Settings tutorial for 3.4. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and show your friends. Hopefully this will help you and your friends pilot better and get into better fights in the PU, and hopefully it'll get me some better fights in the PU, right? Because that's the goal. Again, guys, I'm doing this not to make some flashy YouTube channel or anything like that, and I'm sorry the videos aren't flashy. This is more of a real tutorial than a flashy video, hey, you know, lights and colors and sparkly things. I just want to show you the ins and outs, tips and tricks, practical sense, so you can apply that knowledge in game and have a better time. All right, and then we can all have better fights in the PU. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.